Sometimes a single word can change everything. We're about to look at one ancient word that might just completely flip how you think about your own mind. See, it's usually translated one way, but when you dig a little deeper, well, it reveals something totally different. Something that could literally shift how you see reality itself.
So let's just jump right in with a big question. What if consciousness isn't actually a thing that you have? What if it's an action, something you're doing right now, this very second? I mean, what if your mind is really more of a verb than a noun? Sounds kind of weird, right? But stick with me, because that's exactly where we're going.
Okay, so the word we're zeroing in on is Viññāṇa. Now, if you've ever dipped into early Buddhist texts, you've definitely seen this word. It's all over the place. And almost every single time it gets translated into English with one simple, really powerful word, consciousness.
And, on the surface, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? I mean, when we think of consciousness, we think of a state of being. It's like this background awareness, the space where all our thoughts and feelings happen. It feels really solid, almost like a possession, something that you have.
And what's interesting is that even the early texts seem to back this up. You find passages like this one, where Viññāṇa is lumped in with other words for mind, like chitta or mano. So you'd think, okay, case closed, right? It just means mind or consciousness. Well, not so fast. This is where things get really interesting. This is where we have to put on our detective hat.
See, to really get what this word is pointing to, we can't just take the standard translation at face value. We've got to do what ancient linguists did. We need to crack it open and look at its original parts, its roots, to see what it's actually trying to describe. All right, first up is the prefix vi. Now, this little piece of the word is super important. In the original Pali language, vi is all about separation. Think of it like a knife. Its job is to divide, to separate, to distinguish one thing from another. It's an action. The action of splitting things apart.
Okay, so that's the first part. Now let's look at the root jnana. This is the core of the word. It comes from jnana, which means to know or to perceive. So fundamentally, jnana is all about the process of knowing. It's the act of being aware.
So, let's put it back together. This is the cool part. Vi means to separate, and jnana means to know. Put them together, and what do you get? You don't get a static thing called consciousness. You get an action, to know apart. Or, put another way, the act of distinguishing. It's not just a general awareness, it's the specific job of telling one thing from another.
And here's the difference, laid out side by side. The modern view gives us consciousness, which we think of as a state, a thing. But the ancient insight, buried in the word itself, points to the act of distinguishing, a dynamic, ongoing process. It's a huge shift. It's not something you have, it's something you are constantly doing.
What's really cool is that the old texts totally back this up. They don't just talk about one big, vague consciousness. Nope, they list 6 specific kinds of viññāṇa, and each one is tied directly to a sense organ and what it senses. So you have eye distinguishing of forms, ear distinguishing of sounds, mind distinguishing of ideas, and so on. See? It's never just awareness floating out there, it's always the act of distinguishing something specific.
Okay, let's look at a real-world example from a key text. With the standard translation, a famous line reads something like, "And this my consciousness is bound up in this body." Now think about the picture that paints. It sounds like there's a thing, my consciousness, that's trapped or contained inside my body. Kind of like a ghost in the machine, right?
But now, watch what happens when we plug in our more accurate action-based translation. The same line becomes, "And this, my act of distinguishing, is bound up in this body." Whoa, the entire meaning just shifted, didn't it? It's not about a thing in a box anymore. It's about a process, the act of distinguishing, that is completely woven into and dependent on the physical body it works through.
And this points to a really central idea here, interdependence. This act of distinguishing doesn't just happen on its own in some void. The texts are clear that it's totally intertwined with what they call nama-rupa, which is basically a word for our entire mental and physical being, our mind-body. You simply can't have one without the other. The process needs the body to work, and the body needs the process to have any experience at all. They arise together, completely inseparable.
And look, this isn't just some dusty academic word game. This one single shift in how we understand this word, it has absolutely massive implications for how we see ourselves and our reality. So let's break down why this really matters.
So what's the big takeaway? First, your mind is a verb, not a noun. It's something you do, not something you have. Second, it means your reality isn't just out there, waiting for you. You are actively building it, moment by moment, with every single distinction you make. This makes experience a dynamic, flowing process, not some fixed thing you can grab onto and own. And this fits perfectly with two other huge ideas from these texts, that this process is anicca, always changing, and anatta, meaning it's not some solid, unchanging self.
Which brings us to one last pretty mind-bending question to leave you with. If your entire world, your sense of me and not me, this and that, if it's all built on this constant, flickering activity of making distinctions, what would happen if that process just stopped? What would it be like to see the world without automatically chopping it up into pieces? What would be left?